Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. I am delighted to welcome you all to Milltrus'ts' very first private investment forum. Many of us will know Milltrust because of the British Innovation Fund, a fund that we launched back in 2015. And we exited all the investments to institutional investors at the tail end of last year. We're now embarking on the next phase of our journey. We're going to be focused specifically on three areas. One is healthcare, and I'm delighted to welcome my colleague and Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Bernard Ung, who will be available today during this call. We're also focusing on agri-food, and we are launching a new fund called Ag Biogenesis, and we'll be talking a little bit about that during the course of the day. We have a very exciting company that we're investing in to introduce you to. Our third area of focus is climate impact. We have a long-standing relationship with WWF, as many of you will know, focused on investing into the public equity markets in Asia. And today we're going to be talking about some of the companies in the private arena that we're expecting to invest into in our new Climate Impact Venture Fund. So we have a lot to get through today, but while we're waiting for one or two more people to join this call, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Alex Kalis to show a short video, which is no longer than about 1 minute. Alex, I think we'll get going, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Yanif Dolev. Yanif is joining us from Cody Genetics, a new company, but Yanif is a very seasoned entrepreneur. He has over 15 years in founding startups, and he was the founder of Mobius Medical in 2008, which culminated in a global exclusive licensing deal with Sun Pharma in 2016. Yanif is a vet, and what he's going to talk to us about today is something that we talk about very rarely in the world of food production, and that is how we can prevent the destruction of the progeny of animals that happen to be males. We talk a lot about gender in today's world, but one of the great tragedies in food production is that billions of day-old chicks are ground up and slaughtered. Large numbers of dairy cows, if they are unfortunately born as males, as bobby calves, they go straight off to be ground up into dog meat. This is something that we want to try to bring an end to using the science pioneered by Cody Genetics. And it's my great pleasure to hand over to Yanif Dolev to tell you a little bit more about his company. Over to you, Yanif.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everybody. As Simon has said, I'm a veterinarian by education. I'm an entrepreneur in the life science arena since 2007. all my enterprises till now were in human medicine, and in Cody, we are bringing the most innovative tools of human medicine into the livestock breeding. I'll share with you the presentation. Gene editing will transform all the way that we are breeding animals. We will be able to produce animals in a more sustainable way, to reduce the waste, to increase the environment, reduce the environment contamination, etc. Cody, the first trait that Cody will develop is the sex biasing trait. We will create breeders that can ejaculate sex semen. That means will predetermine what will be the sex of the offspring. And by that, we are answering a huge unmet need in the livestock breeding, where breeders have offspring of the sex that they do not need. Therefore, they have to cool it or to sell it for less price, etc. Or even in swine, we will be able to eliminate the procedure of castrating day-old piglets without anesthesia, something that will become in the European community prohibited starting next year. So we are a B2B company. We provide service to the breeding companies, and we are becoming partners in the most valuable animals of the industry. We have already stressed the unmet need, where billions, something like 7 billion day-old male chicks are being cooled right now. They are produced, unnecessarily produced, and they are being cooled. This is the mechanical sorter. This is the way that the bovine industry is right now influencing on the sex of the offspring. This machine is sorting the semen in a very expensive way. The product of the machine is a semen, in a low quality semen, and it is applicable just in bovine. What we are offering is to edit the embryo. From this embryo, we will have animals that all their sperm, breeders, that all their sperm contains a female gametes or male gametes, as we predetermined when we edited the embryo. So by that, we are eliminating the need of the sorting, the mechanical sorting. We increase dramatically the quantity of straws obtained from this breeder. By that, we are increasing dramatically the efficiency of the breeding. We eliminate the current production cost of $5 to $10 of each straws. And I would like to stress that all the offspring from those breeders do not carry any gene edits or foreign DNA. That means that in the European community, as we understand the regulation right now, they shouldn't even be regulated, the offspring. How do we help the breeding industry? This is the cost calculation of the current sorting machine. We can increase the earning of the breeding company from $200,000 to $300,000 from bull in its lifetime to $2.5 million as we increase the yield of sperm by 5 to 10 times and we reduce the cost. On top of that, we can earn between $800,000 to $900,000 from each bull without any direct cost of goods. How the market for sex semen is evolving, you can see this slide of Genus, one of the competitors, one of the companies that is producing the mechanical sorter. And this slide is stating the increase of their sales all over the world for their sexed product. In addition, you can see this piece of paper from Australia, where the largest Australian breeding company is stating that in the near future, 50% of their sales will be sexed semen. And why? The sex semen is answering the unmet need of the breeding industry. The added value market of the sexing of the semen is estimated in $1.4 billion from each of the sectors. The technology is coming from Tel Aviv University. The scientists have published in a peer-reviewed journal the results of the first generation of the technology, and the editorial decided to highlight the article as an exceptional science. So who are our partners? The technology is coming from the Tel Aviv University. Roslyn Technologies, the home of Dolly the Sheep, reviewed the technology that is coming from the Tel Aviv University and decided to invest in the venture. Moreover, Roslyn is the best place in the world to edit livestock. That means it is dramatically reducing the execution risk. Two future clients, Viking Genetics, one of the largest European breeding company, and Sion, the Israeli leading breeding company, decided to participate in the venture. They understand both, they validate both the unmet need and the business model. In addition, the UK Innovation and Science Seed Fund decided to invest, and therefore we are going to incorporate the company probably in Scotland. So this is our vision to the future. We will have laboratories in the main breeding center all over the world in order to serve the breeding industry. I would like to stress that that sex sorting is very valuable from economical point of view, but this is just one platform to edit additional traits. Thank you. I will be happy to take your questions.
Please feel free to post questions into the chat or Q&A function on the bottoms of your screen. Yannick, that's absolutely fascinating. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the implication for the value of the animals following this sort of gene editing technology? How does this increase the value, for example, of a bull?
Okay. Right now, a bull is ejaculating the equivalent of 300 straws. The sperm can divide it or is packed into 300 straws. A straw is a thin syringe that is being used for the IVF. When sorting, when using this machine, the yield is becoming 20 to 40, the most 60 straws of low quality sperm. If we edit the bull, the embryo, and receive a bull, so therefore we can receive 300 of sex sperm straws. So the yield is increasing dramatically and the quality is increasing dramatically. Therefore, we need less bulls. We can use the sperm of the best bulls over much more cows. Therefore, the work of the breeding companies is becoming much easier, and we eliminate the current production cost of $5 to $7 per straw. Therefore, we make the breeding companies much more efficient. We make them to earn $2.5 million instead of a few $100,000 from a bull.
Yaniv, one question that's come up. Is this actually unique technology to Cody Genetics, and have you been able to protect this IP?
Thank you. We applied a provisional patent protecting the gene that we are editing. Other companies cannot edit those genes in the way that we do that. And therefore, we are the only ones that can work using those genes. And in addition, we have some know-how because other companies cannot edit, do not show yet now that they can edit the Y chromosome, which is a shorter, and this is a unique know-how of the company.
Thank you, Yaniv. You mentioned that you've already received some commitments from investors in this current round of funding. Obviously, through our partnership with Roslyn, where we're founding investors, we have already an interest in Cody. And Milltrus'ts Ag Biogenesis Fund will be making a further investment into Cody Genetics in this round. How much money are you raising What is the value of the company today?
Okay, so right now we have commitments from the 5 institutions that we have mentioned at about $1.9 million, and we are looking for additional $1.6 million in order to close the round. And thank you for your willing to invest in the company, Simon.
That's excellent, Yannis. Thank you very much. That was really fascinating. I think
Can I stress one last point that I believe that is very important?
Yes, please.
Right now, the FDA already have approved 2 traits in livestock breeding. One of them was the FDA have approved a gene-edited swine meat for human consumption, and just a few weeks ago, the FDA already have approved a bovine meat for human consumption. Therefore, we are much beyond the question already if the regulatory authorities will approve gene-edited meat for human consumption. Thank you, Simon, for this marvelous conference and having me.
Thank you very much indeed, Yannis. We're now going to go over to a very different type of company, and I'm very delighted that I'm joined today by Matthew Quitter. Matthew is the founder of London Electric Cars, and a couple of months ago, I had the pleasure of being picked up by him in a vintage Bentley and driven around the sights of London as we whisked through London in a vehicle that hardly made more than a very quiet burring noise, if any noise at all. And we waved at the passers-by who admired the beautiful car. Matthew is on a mission not simply to enable us to salvage beautiful old cars, but to transform our vehicles into electric vehicles through his unique technology that he's been developing at London Electric Cars. And today he's going to tell us a little bit more about that, the impact of the business, and how he sees this as very much the way forward for modern driving. So over to you, Matthew Quitter from London Electric Cars.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you very much for inviting me along today to talk. So we are here in our garage at the moment. You can see some of the cars behind us. This is the Bentley that Simon got around. It's fully electric. That's probably the most pertinent point about the car, as are all the cars in here. We are under some main train lines, so if you lose me, please let me know. But yeah, we were very fortunate recently to be featured on the Department for Transport, UK Department for Transport's. They produced a video about us and posted on their social media and on their website. So I'm going to let them do the heavy lifting, and I'm just going to show you a quick video and then talk about the business a bit. So here we go.
One of my favorite cars to travel around in is the Land Rover, because it really represents the first time that we've successfully installed a complete Nissan Leaf kit into a combustion engine car. My name is Matthew Quitter, and I'm the founder of London Electric Cars. I'm a Londoner born and bred, and grown up here, and I became more and more aware of how polluted London was becoming. It dawned on me that if this thing was electric, it would be way more pleasant, and if there were lots of other electric cars, it would be way more pleasant. As a small child, I had a remote-controlled car that I built myself, and the parallels between a little battery-powered remote-controlled car and a very large passenger-carrying battery electric vehicle is actually really surprising. At their hearts are rather simple vehicles, and so I've decided that it would be interesting to try and convert a car to electric myself, but try and do it affordably. We'll take the combustion engines out of these cars, we won't scrap them, you won't have to make a new car, and you save boatloads of CO2 from being emitted. The car in sort of common folklore is seen as this great liberator. That doesn't need to change, but the role of the car, I think, is changing in society. You hear about something called the EV grin, which is people get into an electric car for the first time, and the experience of driving it is a revelation. So there's these wonderful benefits. The UK is leading the field. We have the technology here, we have the experience, and this is an opportunity for us to develop. It's an entirely new industry, but it is something that is very doable. So I'm hopeful.
Great. Is that, so are you able to hear me there, Alex? Great, okay. So yeah, that was a brief overview of sort of what we do. We effectively convert combustion engine cars to electric. That is the sort of heart of what we do. I'm going to take you quickly through a quick pitch deck that we have. Here we go. This is just a quick overview of the business. Here you've got some examples of some cars we've done: First Classic Mini, Morris Minor, some of our unique tech. So today, the main reason I'm speaking to you is we're looking for investment to grow. So we believe this is the beginnings of a nascent industry, and we think it's going to be massive. We have been going for a few years now. We're one of the biggest companies in the field, and the market we're working in is the UK car market, and it's also the global car market. The UK has 40 million cars. There are 2 billion cars in the world, and the UK car market is worth 80 billion pounds at the moment. So moving very quickly, we are the only conversion company based in a major city anywhere in the world. We're certainly the only one in London. Our unique position as being one of the earliest movers in this market means we've had the privilege of doing some landmark conversions: first Morris Minor, first Land Rover Defender Electric, first Classic Mini. We also have some wonderful customers. We have the Peninsula Hotel Group, who we're doing this incredible Gulbenkian taxi for. And our tech is really what's particularly unique about it is we're able to reuse components from existing electric cars. So Nissan Leafs, Teslas, we get scrapped or versions of those cars. We take the parts out that we need and we repurpose them. And this allows us to offer our conversions at a lower price point. And the reason we're keen to do that is because price is the biggest obstacle to conversion. So the car comes into the garage. It's a fairly simple process. The combustion engine components are removed. We install our electric parts. Modifications are kept to a minimum to avoid any legislative problems. The car is MOT'd, returned to the customer, and they now have their beloved car, but it's electric, and so is removed of any of their environmental concerns that they may have had. The market we're working, as I said, is 40 million vehicles. There are 2 billion vehicles in the world. The UK, along with many other countries, signed up to the Paris Climate Agreement, which states that we're going to halve our CO2 output within the next 8 years. And one of the ways we've identified to do that is by scrapping half our cars. And so that means if there are 40 million cars in the country, we're scrapping somewhere in the region of 20 million cars in the next 8 years. Without the Paris Climate Agreement, we scrap 1 million cars every year as it is, just on a base level. The market we're working in, we have some similar companies, a company called Lunas, who recently valued themselves at £200 million. You've got electric classic cars who have a TV show, and they're doing expensive cars, £90,000 to £150,000, and they are fully booked. And the important thing here is it's a rising tide. This is a growing market. It's new. We're all swamped, completely swamped with demand. The difference, however, is both those companies are looking for high-end stuff. We're trying to do mass production. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to do hundreds of thousands of cars ultimately. Moving very quickly because we're running out of time. Our intellectual property, which is what gives us value, is our engineering. We have all the components that fit batteries into cars. How do we take components from a Nissan Leaf, put it into a combustion engine car and make that an effective form of transport. We have our electronics that we've developed. These are circuit boards, microprocessors that we use to control the cars. And then behind that, we have our software that lets us run all of this. Sustainability, which is obviously why we're here, is obviously very important. But if you've got any questions about that, we can talk about it later. Essentially, to create a new car, you need around, you exhaust around 17 tons of CO2. So every car that we can recycle into an electric car, rather than creating a new car, saves 17 tons of CO2. So this is a really significant vehicle for impact to climate change. We have a core team here of experienced people, each bringing different facets to the business. We work hard, and we're all very dedicated and quite privileged to be working in a field that really lets you innovate in ways that a lot of us haven't had the opportunity to do before. We've been incredibly lucky with our media presence, and our story really resonates. And so all the stories you're seeing here are, we've spent no money on PR. This is all just word of mouth, people seeing the cars out and about, wanting to experience them, wanting to talk about them. And again, it's a real privilege to just be a sort of early mover in the field and get all that attention. So the real reason we're here talking, I'm pitching you today, is we're looking to grow. And we see this as not being just a little niche industry, but something with a really significant, the opportunity to have real significant impact. Our first goal was to prove, could we do this? And we've answered that. We have cars driving around, as Simon experienced, that are fully converted. They ranges from 80 miles to 200 miles. They rapid charge. They're fully functioning electric vehicles. Now we're ready for phase 2, where we're keen to scale up and really figure out, how do we take this to a mass market? How do we go from doing 10 cars, 50 cars, 100 cars, onto doing 500 cars, and then ultimately get through to phase 3, where we start to look at doing 1,000 cars, and then move on from there, 10,000, 100,000. Just by way of size, a company like Morgan is producing less than 500 cars a year. So if we're able to do 1,000 cars a year, that already makes us one of the largest car makers in the UK. We've got a 4-year plan. We are already a profitable business, or we're an ongoing business. We spend most of our money on development at the moment, but with investment, we are able to grow and grow rapidly. And you can see that through growth, we're able to generate an awful lot of profit. In all, we're looking to raise £1 to £2 million in return for 12.5% to 25% equity, and we expect a return in around an exit in around 5 years, and that's it.
Thank you, Matthew. That was really, really good. It's a sad fact that so many beautiful cars are simply incompatible with the roads today. You can't really drive a combustion engine, an old combustion engine vehicle in London anymore. So this is a way of salvaging many of those beautiful old vehicles, and as you say, doing so driving with minimal impact.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. How scalable is this business? I think that's something that many people must have asked you before. You've answered it to some extent, and I think you were very modest in telling us about your clients. You didn't mention the Austin Healey's, I think 100 vehicles that one collector has that he wants to take into Dubai.
Yes. So we were very lucky to recently be asked to start a joint venture with a gentleman who's based out of Dubai. He's keen to do just Austin Healey's with us. So we've got an equity stake in that in return for some of our IP to do Austin Healey's. In terms of scaling up, it is, we use a sort of casually around the garage, we refer to it as being a quick fit scheme. Where we envisage you bring your car to us, or you book a car in to be converted. We have the components ready to go. The real challenge for us is doing the first version of any car. So the first time we do a Mini, the first time we do a Land Rover, we have to do all the design work to get it to fit. Once we've done it once, we then have the designs and the computers. We have the fabricators ready to go, and we can just effectively just print the components. So we would aim to get conversion times down to days. you bring the car in on a Monday, the parts are ready to go, you come pick it up on a Thursday or Friday. In terms of access to materials, there's obviously a big squeeze on the moment. There's the chip shortage. There's going to be a battery shortage. There's too much demand, not enough supply. One of the interesting things about the area we work in is we're obviously interested in actually how many cars are on the road at the moment, because we take a lot of our components from the salvage or the repurpose market. This in itself is a fascinating area to explore. And one of the really interesting things about being in this business at the moment is there are actually too many opportunities. And it's more a challenge of saying, no, we're only going to take the very best ones. There are roughly 50 gigawatt hours of electric car batteries driving around in the country at the moment. By way of sort of comparison, the UK has 1 gigafactory at the moment run by Nissan. It is capable of producing 2 gigawatt hours a year. If we take a 10% scrappage rate, that means that of those 50 gigawatt hours of cars batteries driving around, we expect 5 gigawatt hours to return to the industry through scrappage. And this is something, again, that the UK government's only just beginning to wake up to. It's why we've had the Department for Transport come down to visit. It's why we have an all parliamentary vehicle group coming to visit. And so we see there's a huge opportunity from repurposed used parts. There's also a huge opportunity to speak to second life suppliers. So Nissan, when they produce motors for the Nissan Leaf, they will overorder motors and components. And we have been approached by the people who manufacture those components in whether or not we want to purchase the overrun of parts. So we don't see there being a problem in terms of components. It's really just a matter of picking the right cars, whether it's the modern BMW Mini, whether it's a VW car, and saying which are the ones that are most effective for us to look at for mass conversions.
I imagine today that it's largely people who have collectible cars, and that in itself is a huge market.
Absolutely.
Is there any logic? Do you see sort of government incentives driving a different approach to converting your old vehicle, which may not be a particularly desirable collectible vehicle, but you may be emotionally attached to, into an electric vehicle, because you get a big bung from the government for doing so? Is that the way you see things moving? We
emailed the OZA of the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles to start a dialogue yesterday. In fact, we've recently hired someone who used to work there as a sort of slightly diplomatic ploy. But yes, absolutely. France has already started to talk about a rebate for buying a new electric car or getting your existing car converted. And you mentioned the emotional attachment that people have towards vehicles, and that's actually really important because the car does engender an emotional response. Quite often these are vehicles that, you buy a car when you have your first kid, and that car then lasts you through, birth, dropping off at school for the first time, maybe taking them on their first date, first birthday, all this kind of fun stuff. And people don't want to get rid of their cars, and they understand the environmental impact of replacing one car with a new one for supposedly environmental reasons doesn't actually make that much sense. We expect the government to get on board, particularly when they start to understand, which they seem to be doing now, the implications of what, their decisions to join the Paris Climate Agreement, which is obviously the right one, but what that actually means in terms of scrapping. As they say, 20 million cars we're supposed to be scrapping in the next 8 years. That presents all kinds of problems in terms of, simply where do you put these scrapped cars, but also as we transition to zero emission driving, the vehicles themselves are fundamentally different to what a lot of the garages are used to. And we simply also don't have the demand, the supply to be able to provide enough cars to cover those 20 million cars that in theory are supposed to be scrapped. So conversion really does represent an opportunity both to keep a lot of the traditional businesses in existence, because maybe they're used to working on a Volvo V70. They know how the steering works, they know how the brakes work, and then it's just a matter of getting them a little bit of EV training. We'd also develop our kits. We're very safety conscious, so we're very keen, as the installation process requires as minimal HV experience as possible, because that's really where the skills shortages is at the moment in the UK automotive sector.
Matthew, that's great. I think in the interest of time, we must bring it to a close.
Brilliant.
Really interesting business, and we hope to help you scale it significantly.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Alex Kalis for the next company introduction.
Thank you, Simon. So we now have the pleasure of having Caroline O'Brien and Martin Lam from Kubos Semiconductors, who are going to share with us the groundbreaking work they're doing in the lighting industry, in particular in the LED lighting. So Caroline and Martin, over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Caroline, you're on mute.
Caroline, you're on mute. Yeah.
Hi, apologies for that. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Alex, for the introduction. I'll just share my screen. So it's my pleasure today to be presenting at the Milltrus'ts Inaugural Showcase. I'm joined, as Alex said, by Martin Lam. Martin really developed the original concept for Kubos's technology, along with the University of Cambridge in 2014. It was furthered since then, and Kubos was formed in 2017 to commercialize and to further the technology. So Kubos is currently raising 2.5 million. This is to take us from early evaluation projects with customers to full commercialization through licensing and royalties. So Kubos is a next generation in LED technology. We all know today that LED lighting is very efficient and replaces the current filament bulb lights. But Kubos's LEDs can be more efficient again by about 20 to 40%. We've calculated along with the Carbon Trust that this could save over 600 million tons of CO2 emissions in lighting and displays. This is as much as 150 coal-fired power station emissions in 1 year. So it's really significant savings. So what is the problem? Well, today, red and blue LEDs are very efficient. But when those technologies are moved into the green wavelengths, the efficiency rolls off significantly. This problem has been well understood in the industry, but has remained unresolved for more than 10 years. This is why when you go to buy your white light bulbs from the stores, you either get the choice of your cool blue hues or your warm candle glows. And this is because today your white lights are actually blue LEDs with yellow phosphor coating. This is very inefficient. The absolute best way to make a white light is through what's known as a red, green, blue color mix solution. This would be the most efficient way to do that, but it would also improve the color hues so that we'd end up with a mimicking of daylight more naturally. This would have additional benefits of being able to improve concentration in offices and schools, for example. The way to compensate today is to add more green LEDs, but this adds to the costs of the full color white light solutions. So Kubos can solve this problem. So we can solve the green gap by being more efficient for green and amber LEDs. But we can also solve a second problem for displays, which today full-scale red LEDs won't scale down to the small form factors required for the new and emerging market of micro LEDs for displays. What's really key is our technology is compatible and scalable to existing production lines, and we've demonstrated this in a commercial environment already. Our initial target markets are lighting, so high current and high drive current lighting, spotlights, and runway lighting, for example, but also displays. And we're the introduction of the micro LEDs into TVs and AR, VR is a really exciting and developing market. So we can produce white light more accurately and mimic daylight more naturally. And we've absolutely got the right team and the core team to develop this technology. For myself, I'm the commercialization expert. I've spent nearly 30 years in the semiconductor industry, developing products for new markets and also for licensing and agreements with customers. Martin has spent quite a long time in the industry and is a veteran of the compound semiconductor industry. Until 2000, he was MD of Wafertech, and they were subsequently bought by a UK company called IQE, who's a leader in the wafer and materials segment of the market. In 2005, he left IQE and effectively has been investing and supporting businesses like Kubos since. A key part of our technology development and driving our technology is Professor David Wallace. He currently holds seats in the University of Cambridge and the University of Cardiff and spends a large amount of his time with Kubos developing our technology, along with two of the co-founders who are University of Cambridge employees, but also contract to Kubos. We also work with another couple of contractors, and one of these contractors, who is a growth expert in the industry, will join at the end of this funding round. So as I've mentioned, the market is really quite huge. As you can see here, LEDs touch all parts of our lives and can go into many different applications. But for the Kubos' next stage, we're focusing on the lighting and displays market. If we look at these two markets, they've got quite different dynamics. So the lighting market is growing at around about 12 to 14%, whereas the display market is aggressively growing at a plus 80%. Based on the share of addressable markets for these two segments, Kubos, from a bottom-up plan in forecasting, can show that we can address about 4 and 8% of this market in the 26 to 27 timeframe. So we've already engaged with a large number of LED manufacturers and leading companies. We've got 2 customers already engaged in commercial negotiations, both of which are blue chip organization and household names. One of them is actually evaluating our material as we speak. We've quoted projects with them, and during next year, we expect our first revenue to be realized from these 2 commercial agreements. In terms of the competitive landscape, as I mentioned, for more than 10 years, the existing technology has been worked on to develop and improve the efficiency, which has had modest gains over those years, but it's not solved the problem. Kubos, with its material technology, can solve the issue that causes these inefficiencies in the Green Gap region. We're also aware of other developments in other technologies, which are really making good progress in the lab, but have not been able to crack the full commercialization production challenge. And those are really in still lab development stage. So the material that Kubos has today can not only demonstrate that we can solve the problem, but we can be compatible with existing production lines. So Kubos operates what's known as a fabless semiconductor model. This ensures that we keep our capital expenditure really light, and also the amount of investment required is much less than some of the other companies that are developing material technologies in other markets. By outsourcing, we can ensure we access state-of-the-art equipment, but we can also then bring in multiple suppliers to ensure that we have a good, solid supply chain. Our technology is patented. We had a grant of the patent, our core patent, in Singapore, and we've recently had a grant of the patent in the US, which is key. In terms of the financial progress as we go forward, you can see that as a bottom-up forecast, the numbers are really substantial in terms of the growth and the potential that Kubos can achieve. In terms of operating costs, after this initial investment, the operating costs remain relatively flat as we go forward and as we scale the business. And these numbers are really based on us securing the investment in the time frame that we've required, but it's a huge opportunity. So as I've mentioned, Kubos is raising 2.5 million. We've already secured over 500,000 of that first tranche that I mentioned here. So we're aiming to close that out in the next few weeks. We do have shareholder approval to go a little higher should we have some strategic investment that we want to close. The bulk of the round would close by October 2022. Currently, our pre-money is 4.08 million. With this runway, we're anticipating we would employ 8 further employees. We'd sign our first licensing agreement, and we'd also further our technical development. So today we're at 1% efficiency. You can see here one of our examples of our LEDs. The target is to be 5% by the end of this year, and at the end of this funding round, we'd be at 10%, which really changes the game for the green gap in LEDs. In terms of our exit, the plan is 5 years, and we are targeting over 100 million acquisition based on comparators that we've made with the industry. I'd like to thank you for listening, and Martin and I would be more than happy to take any questions that you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. So I have a few questions here. So first of all, can you explain how Kubos has been able to overcome the green gap that you mentioned when or where so many other participants have failed over the last 10 years?
Yeah, Martin, maybe you'd like to address that one.
Sure. So the solution that we have has been known about for a long, long while. Many people have cottoned onto the fact that it could do the job, but the real issue has been having a scalable technique for producing the material, and the approach that we've adopted allows us to do that. So our process and is based on standard production scale equipment for 6-inch wafers or 8-inch wafers, all standard stuff that is used in the LED industry today, and it's completely scalable. We can drop it in. We're not doing anything very different from what's done with the normal LEDs. All we're doing is producing a slightly different crystal structure, and I won't go into that because everybody's eyes will glaze over and go to sleep. But it's basically the same material, but with a fairly subtle tweak to its properties that produce this material that will allow us to do this, and we've demonstrated that it works.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. And so you mentioned that this technology is entirely compatible with LED manufacturing today. Can you explain and elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah,
sure. So we're using a silicon substrate, so it's a standard vanilla piece of silicon that you can, well, clearly everybody knows about, and Matthew was talking about the chip shortages at the moment. There are shortages of silicon, but those are probably temporary. But we use standard silicon just as those chips do, and we grow gallium nitride on top of it using standard equipment that is already installed in the LED industry in significant quantities. So there's installed capacity for doing this in volume, and all of the materials and consumables are identical. So all we're producing is the same material. So it's gallium nitride still, but it has a cubic structure, not a hexagonal structure. And that subtle difference means that it has slightly different properties that allow us to make devices that are more efficient.
Okay, great. And then how many other people or groups are looking to introduce this kind of technology, and also who would be the likely acquirer of this type of IP?
Okay, so there is competition, and there are alternative approaches. As Caroline said, the industry has been working for 10 years to try and solve this problem. One thing that you can do with the existing gallium nitride structures that people are using is you can rotate the material with respect to the way the device is produced, and that in principle has the opportunity to produce a more efficient device, and people have managed to do that. So there is a subtle change to the existing technology that allows you to improve things, but you don't get the same big win that we get. In terms of direct competition for our approach, there isn't any. We have also obviously protected our intellectual property. There are people in the States who are looking at a very academic way of producing this material, but it isn't scalable. So it produces long, thin lines of the material, but they're not really suitable for volume manufacturing, whereas we're producing 6-inch wafers. So in terms of competition, there is competition, but we're ahead of the game and we've protected what we've got. In terms of the likely acquirers, any of the mainstream LED producers would be interested in this. It's a problem that everybody faces, and as Caroline has said, if you go to the display market, everyone is chasing the displays market and looking for ways of breaking into that as soon as they can, because of the enormous accelerated growth rates that everybody's seeing. So there are many established companies, the likes of Osram and so forth, Lumileds, Philips, all of these people are potential acquirers. And then there are other specialists who, given that we're a materials play, who would also be interested in us.
Right, thank you. And so obviously this is an incredible technology to address the energy efficiency and save on or to help on the climate change problem as well, but then also to improve on the quality of the RGB lighting solutions for these LED manufacturer or users. So great. Well, so thank you very much for that. Maybe we can move on now to our next speaker. So I'm delighted to introduce Andrew Webster from Polymateria. Polymateria is a groundbreaking company focused on tackling the plastic pollution problem. So maybe I can hand it over to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Delighted to be here. I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about our business. Hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, so we are a UK business headquartered here in London. We have our labs in the Imperial Innovation Centre of Imperial College. We're not a spin out of an Imperial, but we do have a very deep partnership with them. We sponsor a series of PhDs. We do a lot of work with them on two of our UK innovation grants, and they're a very important partner of what we do. We have a world-class board. Our chairman is Mark Bolland, who's former chairman and CEO of Marks and Spencer's, former CEO of Morrison's, sits on the board of Coca-Cola and IAG and Blackstone Partners. Frederick Demevius is the family of InBev of AB InBev, Jonathan Seif, and Simon Sussman, who is the former chairman of Woolworths South Africa and now chairman of Virgin Active. Our management team are based up of a series of former executives from BT. So we have the former Chief Sustainability Officer of British Telecom, the former Head of Advocacy and Regulation for International at Tesla, and our Chief Commercial Officer is the former packaging lead for Borouge, which is the joint venture between Borealis and ADNOC based out of Singapore. We're focused on introducing our technology into polyolefin plastics. Polyolefins are the most common types of plastics that tend to be fugitive. And we develop all of our technology out of our labs in the UK. It's fully patented and is being published in multiple countries around the world. So what are we looking to solve? In any given year, there's about 150 million tons of packaging waste produced. And unfortunately, on average, 32% ends up in the environment. And that's largely because of mismanaged waste, not necessarily because people litter, but it's largely down to the mismanaged waste system. That means there's somewhere around 50 million tons ends up in the environment every year. So 32% is a huge number, but if you go to parts of Southeast Asia, by example, Malaysia, that number is as high as 63%, and that's a government number. So unfortunately, that number is actually probably even higher. In developed countries, the number tends to be in the single digits, And so our target market is going to be in the developing world, where we have multiple different programs already underway. So what have we developed? We're a master batch solution. So we fit directly into the value chain of manufacturing of plastics that happens today. So there's no impact, there's no additional capital requirement. We provide a stability phase to our technology, where all of the active ingredients are essentially protected from the environment conditions that trigger the technology. And we can dial that up or down to give the plastic its normal utility. It's normally in film plastics, that tends to be around a year. In rigid plastics, it tends to be somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And during that time, because the product is still a polyethylene or polypropylene, it can still go into that recycling stream. And we've done lots of recycling tests to prove that we can do that. Once that stability phase wears off, what we then is the technology kicks in, and there are various different environmental triggers to that. And you get a rapid change, which is a chemical catalytic and co-catalytic reactions, which turn the plastic from that inert product down into something that's akin, from a chemical point of view, of a wax. And that is a recognizable food source for the bugs that exist everywhere between the 2 Arctic circles. And what they do is they consume the remaining carbon in that material for carbon dioxide, water, and biomass, leaving no ecotox issues whatsoever. And everything is tested to multiple different international standards. We're the only company in the world that's ever been able to show aerobic biodegradation across normal plastics. And what we did then is we went to the British Standards Institute, and we worked with them to create a standard which was published in October 2020 that is now being adopted in multiple countries around the world. So this standard shows that you don't create any microplastics, that there is entirely full biodegradation in real world conditions, using multiple different ISO and ASTM test methodologies that replicate those world conditions and prove that there's 100% biodegradation. So now we're taking that to, it's already published in parts of Eastern Europe. It's just been published in the Philippines. We're hoping to have it published in India by the end of this year and applied into legislation. And we're working across Thailand, Indonesia, Morocco, Ecuador, other parts of South Asia and beyond. There's about a dozen or so countries we're working at the moment. So we have a series of bullet points that we tend to show of how our technology has a range of credibilities. So the standard which we created with the BSI, which is one of the most credible standards institutes in the world, ensures there's no microplastics, no toxic substances, it's food safe, we have our food contact certificates, etc. We were also last year selected as a technology pioneer for the World Economic Forum. We are very scalable. We're not making a new material, we're just dropping into the current material process, and we're cost efficient. So roughly the end increase to the end packaging price is somewhere around 10 to 15% increase, depending on the complexity of that material, which compares entirely favorable to what would be deemed as competitive technologies. So things like compostables, where the resin prices alone can be 3 to 4 times the ingoing cost. Where do we sit? So we have multiple different partnerships across multiple parts of the industry. The decision makers towards the right-hand side are the brand owners, the retailers, the NGOs, and the governments through either legislation, innovation, brand use, etc. But our customers sit further back in the value chain. So we sell to the brand owners and retailers the innovation, but we actually contract with the master batch or converters, the converters being the manufacturers of those plastic products. So we have partnerships, we have global partnerships with Indorama, who are the world's largest PET producer, but they're also one of the world's largest non-woven producers. So we have a global exclusive contract with them to make fiber and non-woven products that are things like wipes, face masks, other hygiene products. We recently just integrated our technology into the resin pellet at source. So rather than dropping it into the manufacturing process like a color, We've recently just proved that we can put it into a resin pellet at source, which we did in industrial scale with Formosa Plastics, who are the #5 petrochemical company in the world. And then we're launching product. We've already launched products in 7-Eleven in Taiwan, and we'll be doing some products with AB InBev in Brazil towards the back end of this year. This is just a slide taken from Indorama Ventures Public Markets Day back in middle of February, where they announced our partnership as part of their strategic sustainability programs. They talked about the fact that our technology is the world's first biodegradable polyolefin solution, that they have great scale in their environmental conditions for their products. It's a joint ambition to create unique products for the hygiene market, and was announced in further slides as one of their key strategic growth partnerships. Other types of products that commonly would be associated with when things that our product can go activate in, and stuff we're making already to date or partnering with to date, are bakery products, stretch film, shopping bags, shrink wrap, BOPP, which is the shiny film you get around cigarette boxes, flower sleeves, twist wraps on confectionery. And then in the rigid polypropylene sector, things like takeaway containers, drinking cups, and others. Some of them obviously are banned within Europe and other countries, but other places in the world, there's still a high volume of product being used. Market, the addressable market of which our technology can work in at the moment is 60 million tons of product. We dose our product at 2% by weight, which gives us an addressable market size for our product of 1.2 million tons. Our year 5 business plan is less than 0.5% of that addressable market, and shows a very strong revenue stream through that 5-year period, growing from about £3 million turnover this year to about just over £80 million in year 5. Use of funds. So we're raising 20 million sterling. Our last fundraise post money was 115 million sterling. We expect to be somewhere around between 80 and 100% increase on that previous valuation when we close. We're in discussions with a number of our industrial partners to be the cornerstone investor within the round. And then we're raising funds through high net worths and sustainability focused funds. We'll be using it to scale our sales team, regulatory ambitions, some marketing, and ongoing R&D. The idea is that we will go from polyolefins. We expect to have solutions for other types of resins, whether it be PET, PLA, other compostables, etc., in the next 3 to 5 years. In the media, we've been had lots of media coverage, from The Guardian and the National Geographic to Bloomberg, industrial coverage in publications, through to international Hindustan Times. Our CEO is currently in India as we speak today. He met with the Environment Minister yesterday, and he's met with a whole series of very large petrochemical businesses this morning. And we hope to have a very big business in India in the coming next 12 to 18 months. So that's very swiftly our business. I'm going to stop sharing there and take any questions that you may have.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. So first question is the use of organic biomass to plastic alternatives a threat to the success of Polymateria? There are other competitors or groups doing similar things, recycled products or organic biomass products like pea proteins and things like that. How do you see that playing out with what you're doing?
Yeah, we're not a silver bullet, so we're not the only solution to what people can do, but we are the most scalable by some significant distance and cost efficient wise. So there will be lots of different products that may have some niche, some might have a little bit of volume, but it's all about scalability and also the utility of the plastics that they're making. So some can't be reheated, some pretty much can't be, or most of them can't be recycled. And you can only make films, or you can't make rigids and other things. So yes, there will be lots of different solutions out
Good. And then there's a significant battle between the recycling lobby and those proposing more biodegradable technologies. How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, I think you'll have probably 2 or 3 different tiers in solutions. So there is in places like Europe, there's a drive to more and more recycling. The sad fact is that actually our recycling rates are reducing. Technologies like ours are not necessarily as required in those markets, but where the products just end up in the environment because there is no waste management, never mind recycling management, then there's going to be a long term before they even get, and it's it's $1 trillion problem to scale up recycling systems to get into communities.
Great. Okay, well, I think the time's up, so I will now pass it on over to Bernard, who will lead the next round, next section.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have Manish, the CEO and founder of Jiva.ai. I got to know Manish through a mutual introduction. Manish has a doctorate in mathematical modeling with the emphasis of dealing with large complex data sets from UCL London. He has a master's in bioinformatics and his bachelor degree in molecular genetics from King's College of London. He is currently the technical architect of Jiva.ai, with previous experience doing algorithmic trading with Lehman Brothers, Tibra Capital, and Barclays, leveraging big data. And he has now used his experience to build the platform called Jiva, which has multiple applications and focus on healthcare. I've seen many such companies. I'm just so excited to share what he has with all of you. Manish, over to you.
Many thanks, Bernard. I'm just going to share my screen here. So hello everyone, and thank you for the organizers for having me today, and thanks Bernard for that very kind introduction. We've had some great presentations today already, and I'm conscious that we're moving towards lunch, so I'll try to keep it as brief and succinct as possible for you. I'm going to turn this deck on its head a little bit and start with the team, because I think this is the most important aspect of our company. I do not exaggerate when I say I'm surrounded by absolute rock stars on this team. You've already heard a little bit about me and my background from Bernard, so I shan't repeat that. But in the core team and board, we have quantum physicists, ex-data science lecturers, serial entrepreneurs and investors with exits under their belts. So we're surrounded ourselves with all sorts of diverse people to help us scale this company. I want to make a special mention for 2 recent hires, because I believe they represent a really pivotal point in our journey of this company. The first is our CFO, Myron Mahendra, who actually I only met last month, and he was actually scoping the company for investment for the family offices that he represents. And within our third meeting, we were already talking about him having joining the company as a CFO. Jared Germano is a recent hire that will actually he starts next month. He is a CRO from a US company with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales experience over there in med tech especially, and comes with a captive client base. I'm incredibly excited to have them coming on board this next month. So what is Jiva? I shall leave you to look up what the word means, but Jiva is a platform technology. Our what is in fact dual, so truly multimodal AI for anything, anywhere. So you're able to create, evaluate, and deploy your AI models. So to be able to truly practically create complex AI systems, these things are really out of the reach, even for well-established businesses. And so there's a very definite skills shortage that contributes to that, and we want to be able to fix that particular problem. I'll come on to the multimodal bit a little bit later, but just bear that one in mind. The second is truly accessible AI for anyone in any vertical. It means that we want AI tech to become as easy to use as your everyday tools like emails and spreadsheets. And it's easy to forget actually that how much technology goes behind those tools that you use every single day. There's a lot of magic going on behind the scenes there. And we want to make that as easy to do as possible with AI. So this is the grand vision. We want to make it possible to create AIs to the point that you can actually describe it in natural language. So I have an example there. This might be a GP, in a doctor's surgery, who types into Jiva, get me all my patients in my database and predict everyone who will suffer from heart disease. And it's actually one of the things that we did pretty recently for one of our potential clients. How do we actually get to that point? Well, what we're going to do, at least for the next 2 years or so, is to create a data science workbench that is accessible to everyone, that is easy to use, that doesn't require sort of technical expertise to use. And whilst people are using that platform, our own AI technology in the background is actually learning how humans do data science, how humans create AIs. And in doing so, we will get better and better over time on how to actually tackle certain problem sets, whether it's in healthcare or fintech or insurtech, wherever it might be, we'll be able to tackle all of those problems with our set of AI solutions in the background. What problem does that actually realistically solve? Well, I'm willing to bet you've heard all sorts of pitches in the last few years, especially during COVID times. And how many times have you heard about a deep tech company who wants to use AI to diagnose cancer or to discover a new biomarker or to detect unusual trading activity? In fact, I did that particular thing for a bank. These kind of companies are springing up all over the place. But they all have a very common thread, and that is that they all use AI in some respect to solve a particular problem. And some do it really well, others not so much. What we're trying to do is trying to make that journey a lot easier for them. So here's a very short story about an SME, and it could be, it could easily be a very large corporate too. But let's take a startup that is led by a clinician who wants to predict heart disease from primary care data. And this clinician, she has lots of data already, or at least she knows how to procure it. She has some idea of what she wants. She wants to predict heart disease from things like BMI and that kind of stuff. But she doesn't know how to get to that point of creating a medical diagnostic. She doesn't know what it might cost her in terms of time and money. And she doesn't know how to measure the ROI of that cost either. These are questions that all companies of almost all sizes in almost every single industry are tackling when they're using AI. What will she do? Well, she might hire a data science team. That's very expensive. She might hire AI data science consultants, also very expensive. She might outsource. Well, there's IP problems there because people like to grab onto IP. And then the things that she didn't even realize once she's even created a medical device and got it through the regulatory components, once those things are deployed, there are all sorts of ML ops costs. So the operating costs of actually deploying an AI, keeping it up to date and keeping it versioned and having it have a 99.9% uptime and that kind of thing. Also, critically, it's very difficult to deal with modalities. So when our clinician here, she's created an AI from primary care data to predict heart disease. When there is a new indicator like socioeconomic background or genetics or some kind of proteomic component that gives you a little bit more information about whether this person is susceptible to heart disease, well, it's really hard to integrate that new piece of information into your existing AI. And that is precisely the problem that we tackle under the hood. We have the technology to be able to merge different AIs together to create a bigger, better representation of what you're trying to do. And that helps our customers maintain a competitive edge in the marketplace. And it also helps them create AIs that are far more closer to the thing that they're trying to model than doing it the ordinary way of just using, for example, neural networks to do simple classifications. So just to give you a quick idea of what costs might be involved in going through this process for our clinician friend, we could go from as low as the low hundreds of thousands of pounds in terms of salaries and computations, all the way through to millions of pounds for your large MNC who has a lot more people and require a lot more computation to do the things that they want to do. Obviously, this isn't a comprehensive list, but it gives you an idea of what kind of cost and time is involved. So the video you see here is doing exactly what I just described before for our clinician. It's a sped up video. It's only about 6 minutes long, and it shows you within 6 minutes how you can create a heart disease predictor from a database of 10,000 patients that have features like BMI, heart disease history in families, and that kind of thing. And what we're trying to do here, in fact, this was done by one of my developers who's not even a data scientist. What he's trying to do here is to chain together all these different components that are required to create an AI solution. And you can see that in the end, he doesn't really need any really special knowledge about how the thing comes together. In the back end, like I say, our system is learning how everything is being put together. So the next time someone comes along with this particular data set, or there's a similar type of data set, they're able to do that in a much quicker way through our AutoML process. Not only does he do all of his R&D here, he does his deployment here too. So he can deploy into a production environment right from the same platform. So he doesn't need to have any kind of special knowledge around the MLOps side of things. And that creates a nice stickiness to our product. Very importantly, our customers love the fact that we don't hold their IP. So whatever they create here in this particular platform is entirely theirs. The AI solution is theirs. But here's the important point. We're not quite at the low code UI that we want to be at in terms of our vision, but it's part of the reason why we're raising the money. Our first step is just to create this drag and drop kind of interface to enable this particular type of activity. So where have we got to date? Well, we have our platform already up and running and we have revenue coming in. But in our early days, we kind of had to understand what our customers wanted and how they might operate in the marketplace. And so to do that, we actually created two use cases, one prostate cancer diagnostics and another in liver disease screening, which is actually partnered with Roche Diagnostics and GE. And just to understand what they need to go through to create these products. And we were able to rapidly prototype AI in those particular areas. And it puts us in a really unique position because it means that we're actually two startups in one. There is actually an opportunity to have early exit opportunities for those particular use cases. Onto the ask. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to whiz through this. We're looking for a minimum of £3 million. We already have existing investors softly committed to following on. Essentially, this is for us to scale up our business. It is for us to make the extra hires that we need, both at C-level and developer level, to execute the scaling pathways for our platform and exit Jiva.ai, which is our prostate cancer product, and effectively become a world leader and challenger in the AI marketplace. And with that, I am at precisely 10 minutes, so I shall stop there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Manish, for bringing some light into a very complex area, right? We heard about AI so many times, but you make it easier for us to understand. So maybe the first question I see on the board here is, what is the concept of multimodality so important, right? And is it a recognized problem? I think you gave a bit of color from there. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, I think multimodality has always been a problem. It's just never been called multimodality. It's always been, I have some data, I'm going to create some classifier from it, I'm going to create some kind of model from it in AI. And what people don't realize after they've done that is that actually there's always going to be new things that come up that are going to affect how that model behaves. And you want to incorporate those new things into your model so that you can remain competitive in your marketplace, whatever it might be. So I took prostate cancer as an example there, or heart disease as an example there. Those situations are always going to come up. And what happens currently is that these guys go all the way back to drawing board, integrate their data together, which might not even be possible to do in the first place, and then do the entire R&D modeling process all over again. And if you imagine how long that might take, I'll give you an example from our liver disease use case, right? Our liver disease use case, my CTO worked on that 2.5 days a week for 9 months and created and did it the normal way, Python coding, created an AI from the data set, created a model, also created a model that works, but took 9 months for him to do it. Now imagine going through that process again, doing it again for 9 months. In this particular case, actually our backend developer, James, he started from scratch on our liver disease project, used our platform. Within 3 days, he had a model that was superior. So that's the kind of scale up we're talking about that we can actually provide, not only in the R&D process for your initial modeling, but then the multimodal aspects, the other pieces of information that contribute to a complex system. How do those integrate in afterwards?
Thank you, Manish. Two questions that I'm going to bundle into one, right? How do you see Jiva generating new IP? The customers hold the IP as you have presented, and what gives you a competition, right? What gives you an edge over the competition? So someone asked about RapidMiner and other such offerings. So
yeah, sure. So people like RapidMiner, Data IQ, Databricks, those kind of guys, they like to say that they're low no code, but actually they're not. Again, just to demonstrate the point, I have a guy that has 30 years of experience in data science. He picked up Databricks the other day for the first time. He doesn't really use those kind of applications, just to see how it worked, and he just couldn't make it work. He couldn't actually get anything useful out of it. And so there are those applications out there like RapidMiner that are not really low code. First of all, they're not really built for your ordinary person and don't really quite cater for the full breadth of type of companies that are using AI along all the different types of industry verticals. That's the first thing. The second thing is none of the companies that are mentioned there in our competitor list, I've got a big list of competitors, actually tackle multimodality in any serious way. None of them recognize this fact that you have to be able to integrate data, new pieces of information over time, new verticals of data over time. What was the former question again? Sorry.
Yeah. So the question of how do you, because you're not holding the IP, right? So what is Jiva's IP, right?
Yeah. So we actually already have a patent for the types of algos that we use under the hood. 90% of the world uses neural networks. The other 10% uses some kind of probabilistic algos like Bayesian methodologies, that kind of thing. And none of those actually help you do the multimodality piece. So we've actually created a whole new breed of algos that help us create our AIs. So when we say our customers hold their IP, they create the solutions, they hold that particular IP. Our IP actually comes in where we are observing how our users are doing data science, how our users are creating AIs. That is actually our real IP. We hold that data, we hold that human behavior internally, and we teach our own AIs how humans are doing those things, so that next time round, our AI can say, hey, I've seen this kind of problem before. This is how you should do it. Don't spend $100,000 on AWS doing neural networks and convoluted neural networks and all this kind of stuff. I already know that this particular class of agent-based model fits this problem really, really well. Spend $4,000 instead.
All right. Well, one last question, and I think we need to close this. So I was very excited when we met and I looked at how your output of this liver cancer and the prostate cancer, which I understand you're going for FDA and CE marking, right? So, so that's very exciting. Can you talk a bit about how long that process took and how do you potentially see Jiva exiting right to the next round?
Oh yeah, sure. So in terms of those particular use cases, the liver disease one is an easy one. We've actually already done all the work there. It was part of a 3-year grant-funded project, which is halfway through. So technically, there's 18 months left on the project. The way we see that exiting is a spin out from Manchester University, where everyone who's on the consortium, so that's us, that's Roche Diagnostics, that's GE Healthcare, and Manchester University, will probably create a spin out from Manchester, and we will obviously hold some IP and revenue sharing opportunity there as a company of contributing to that technology. Similarly, for the prostate work, we're actually talking to large consultancy businesses who are interested, once we are CE marked and FDA approved, to actually buy that product from us or license it from us so that they can scale it themselves, because they are more interested in specific disease verticals and selling those specific disease verticals. Whereas we, as a SaaS company, we just want to sell the tooling, right? We're kind of like the Microsoft Excel of the world, where, you know, when you want to create a spreadsheet, you go to Excel. When someone wants to create an AI, we want them to go to Jiva.
Okay. And so you potentially see yourself being like the tool of choice for everyone who wants to do AI, right?
Exactly, yeah. So rather than be a specific solution for a specific disease area, we just want to be able to serve all of those horizontally.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Manish.
Thank you for having me.
Simon, back to you.
Well, thank you very much from Milltrus'ts to all of our participants today. Really good. We've managed to keep this to an hour and a half, which is very succinct and concise. I think everybody will have found the presentations extremely interesting. The launch of our private investor platform coincides with the launch of 3 new funds that we're setting up within our vehicle in Singapore. Future Health, that we saw a brief video about, Ag Biogenesis Fund, which will invest into agri-food, and the Climate Impact Venture Fund. So we'd like you to keep following us for further news on those 3 products, and do connect. We're going to send a link after this event. Do connect with the private investor platform link so that you can be kept up to date specifically with the companies that you're interested in and future events. On that note, I'd like to bring this event to a close. Thank you all once again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.